Most people are not weak because of their circumstances. They are weak because their mind has never been trained. Awareness begins the moment you stop believing that every thought in your mind is true. Most people live their entire lives reacting automatically without ever questioning what is happening inside them. A single negative thought appears, and instantly it becomes a feeling, then a reaction, and then a behavior. This cycle repeats so quickly that it feels natural, almost invisible. But the truth is, what feels natural is often just what is practiced the most. When you start building awareness, you begin to slow this process down. You notice the thought before it becomes an emotion. You observe the emotion before it turns into an action. This small gap, this moment of observation, is where your power lives. Without awareness, there is no control. Without control, there is no strength. At first, this will feel difficult. Your mind will wander constantly. Thoughts will come and go, pulling your attention in different directions. Some thoughts will be loud, filled with fear, doubt, or insecurity. Others will be subtle, quietly shaping your decisions without you even realizing it. The goal is not to stop these thoughts. That is not possible. The goal is to see them clearly without immediately reacting. Imagine sitting back and watching your thoughts like clouds passing through the sky. Some are dark, some are light, some are heavy, and some disappear quickly. You do not chase them. You do not fight them. You simply watch. The moment you do this, you separate yourself from them. You begin to understand that you are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. This shift changes everything. When a negative thought appears, instead of saying, "This is me," you begin to say, "This is just a thought." That small change creates distance. And in that distance, there is freedom. Freedom to choose how you respond. Freedom to not let every emotion control your actions. Over time, you will start to notice patterns. You will see which thoughts come back again and again. You will recognize the triggers that create stress, anger, or fear. This awareness allows you to interrupt old habits. Instead of repeating the same reactions, you begin to respond differently. Slowly, your mind becomes less reactive and more intentional. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming conscious. You still feel everything, but you are no longer controlled by everything. You decide which thoughts deserve your attention and which ones do not. You stop feeding the thoughts that weaken you and start focusing on the ones that strengthen you. With consistent practice, this awareness becomes sharper. You catch yourself faster. You recover quicker. Situations that once overwhelmed you begin to lose their power, not because life has become easier, but because you have become more aware of what is happening within you. Discipline begins where motivation ends. Most people wait to feel ready before they take action. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the right moment. But that moment rarely comes, and even when it does, it doesn't stay. Motivation is temporary. It rises quickly, and it disappears just as fast. If your actions depend on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. Discipline works differently. It does not ask how you feel. It does not negotiate with your emotions. It simply requires that you do what needs to be done, regardless of your internal state. This is uncomfortable in the beginning because your mind is used to choosing ease. It prefers comfort over effort, distraction over focus. When you introduce discipline, you are going against that pattern. There will be days when you feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. On those days, your mind will try to convince you to delay, to skip, to make excuses that feel reasonable. It will tell you that missing one day doesn't matter, that you can start again tomorrow, that you deserve a break. These thoughts will feel convincing because they are familiar, but discipline is built in these exact moments, not when everything feels easy. You show up anyway, even if your energy is low, even if your focus is not perfect. You do the work in its simplest form if necessary, but you do not break the pattern. Because every time you follow through despite resistance, you are training your mind to obey your decisions instead of your feelings. At first, the effort feels heavy. Every action requires pushing against resistance. But slowly, something begins to shift. What once felt difficult starts to feel normal. The resistance becomes weaker because you stop listening to it. You prove to yourself again and again that you can act without needing motivation. This builds trust within yourself. Discipline also removes unnecessary decision making. When you decide in advance what you will do, you eliminate the daily debate with your mind. There is no question of, should I do this today? The answer is already decided. This creates clarity, and clarity reduces hesitation. Over time, discipline creates consistency, and consistency builds momentum. You begin to see progress, not because you felt inspired every day, but because you stayed committed even on the days you didn't. This consistency becomes part of your identity. You are no longer someone who starts and stops. You become someone who continues. Your mind starts to understand that excuses are no longer effective. It adapts to your new standard. Instead of looking for comfort, it begins to expect effort. This is how discipline reshapes your mindset. Not through intensity, but through repetition. Not through emotion, but through action, taken again and again, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Discomfort is something most people spend their lives trying to avoid. The moment things become difficult, the instinct is to step back, to delay, or to choose the easier path. This reaction feels natural because the mind is designed to protect you from pain. But the problem is, the same mechanism that protects you can also keep you stuck. Growth does not happen in comfort. It happens when you step into situations that challenge you, situations that stretch your limits and force you to face resistance. Every time you avoid discomfort, you are reinforcing the habit of staying the same. Every time you face it, you are creating the possibility of change. In the beginning, discomfort feels intense. It shows up as fear, doubt, anxiety, or even frustration. Your body may feel tense. Your thoughts may become louder, and your mind may search for ways to escape. It will offer you excuses that sound logical. It will remind you of past failures. It will try to convince you that this is not the right time. But these reactions are not signals to stop. They are signs that you are stepping outside of what is familiar. When you start to understand this, your relationship with discomfort begins to change. Instead of seeing it as something negative, you begin to recognize it as part of the process. You stop asking, how can I avoid this? And start asking, what can I learn from this? This shift transforms the way you approach challenges. Discomfort becomes a tool. It shows you where you need to grow. It reveals your weaknesses, not to discourage you, but to give you direction. If something feels difficult, it means there is something there that can make you stronger. The discomfort is not the problem. Avoiding it is. As you face discomfort repeatedly, your tolerance begins to increase. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. Situations that used to create fear no longer have the same effect. This is not because those situations have changed, but because you have. Your mind becomes more stable, more resilient, and less reactive. There is also a quiet confidence that begins to develop, not the kind that comes from success alone, but the kind that comes from knowing you can handle difficulty. You start trusting yourself in uncertain situations because you have faced discomfort before and moved through it. This trust is powerful because it does not depend on external outcomes. Over time, you begin to seek discomfort in small ways. You choose the harder option, not because you enjoy pain, but because you understand its value. You speak when it feels uncomfortable. You act when it feels easier to hesitate. And you continue when it feels tempting to stop. Each of these choices strengthens your mindset. Discomfort stops being something you fear and becomes something you respect. It is no longer an obstacle in your path, but a necessary part of it. Through repeated exposure, your mind learns that discomfort is temporary, but the strength you gain from it stays. Your environment shapes you more than you realize. Every day, without noticing, you are being influenced by what you see, what you hear, and the people you allow around you. Your thoughts are not created in isolation. They are formed by repeated exposure. What you consume consistently becomes what you think about, and what you think about eventually becomes how you act. If your environment is filled with distraction, negativity, and noise, your mind will slowly adapt to it. You may not see it immediately, but over time, your focus weakens, your patience decreases, and your standards begin to lower. You start accepting things that once felt wrong. You begin to tolerate habits that do not serve you. This happens quietly, without any clear signal, which is why most people never question it. Control begins with awareness. You have to take a step back and look at what surrounds you. What kind of content are you consuming daily? What conversations are you part of? What kind of energy do the people around you bring into your life? These questions are not small. They define the direction of your mindset. Not everything deserves your attention. Just because something is available does not mean it is beneficial. Every piece of content you watch, every word you listen to, and every interaction you engage in either strengthens your mind or weakens it. There is no neutral ground. Even small exposures, repeated over time, create patterns that are difficult to break. This is why protecting your environment is not an option. It is a responsibility. You have to become selective, not in a way that isolates you from the world, but in a way that filters what enters your mind. You choose what you allow to influence you. You reduce the noise that distracts you and increase the input that helps you grow. Sometimes this means creating distance from people who drain your energy, from habits that waste your time, from content that leaves you feeling empty or negative. This does not require conflict or explanation. It requires clarity. You understand what you need, and you align your environment with that need. At the same time, you actively build an environment that supports your growth. You surround yourself with ideas, conversations, and influences that challenge you to think deeper and act better. You expose your mind to things that raise your standards instead of lowering them. This creates a positive pressure, a silent force that pushes you forward without constant effort. Your environment also affects your discipline and consistency. When your surroundings support your goals. Your actions become easier to maintain. When your surroundings work against you, even simple tasks feel difficult. This is why changing your environment can often create faster results than trying to force change through willpower alone. Over time, as you continue to control what you allow into your life, your mindset becomes clearer and more focused. You are no longer pulled in different directions by external influences. Instead, your environment begins to work with you, reinforcing the mindset you are trying to build instead of breaking it down. Patience is one of the most misunderstood parts of building a strong mindset. Most people want change, but they want it quickly. They expect results after a few days of effort. And when those results do not appear, frustration begins to grow. This frustration often leads to doubt, and doubt leads to inconsistency. The process is abandoned, not because it does not work, but because it does not work fast enough. Real change does not happen in a moment. It happens in repetition. Small actions done consistently over time begin to shape your thinking, your habits, and your identity. But these changes are not always visible in the beginning. You may feel like nothing is happening. You may question whether your efforts are making any difference. This is where patience becomes necessary. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active consistencies without immediate reward. It is continuing to do the work, even when you cannot see the outcome yet. This requires trust, not in the result, but in the process itself. You understand that every small action is contributing to something bigger, even if you cannot measure it right now. There will be moments when progress feels slow. You may compare yourself to others and feel like you are falling behind. You may look at your current position and feel dissatisfied. These thoughts are natural, but they can become distractions if you give them too much attention. When you focus too much on how far you still have to go, you lose sight of how far you have already come. Consistency is what gives patience its power. It is not about doing something perfectly. It is about showing up again and again, even in a simple form. Some days your effort will be strong, and other days it will be minimal. Both matter. What matters most is that you do not stop, because every time you continue, you are reinforcing a pattern that strengthens your mindset. Patience also changes the way you respond to setbacks. Instead of seeing them as failures, you begin to see them as part of the process. You understand that progress is not always linear. There will be moments of growth and moments of difficulty, but neither defines the entire journey. What defines it is your ability to keep going despite both. As time passes, something subtle begins to shift. The things that once felt difficult start to feel normal. The habits you struggled to maintain become part of your routine. Your reactions become calmer. Your focus becomes sharper. And your decisions become more intentional. These changes may not be dramatic in a single moment, but together they create a strong foundation. Patience allows these changes to take root. Without it, you would constantly restart, never giving yourself enough time to grow. With it, you give your efforts the space they need to develop into something stable and lasting. You stop chasing quick results and start building something that endures over time. Your mindset begins to reflect this stability. You are no longer rushed by urgency or discouraged by slow progress. You move with a sense of calm focus, understanding that lasting strength is built quietly through time, through repetition, and through the willingness to continue. even when nothing seems to be changing on the surface. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, you will respond differently. The same situations that once disturbed your peace will no longer have the same power over you. The same thoughts that once controlled your actions will pass through your mind and leave without impact. You will not need to force strength anymore. It will be there, quiet, steady, unshaken, because you trained your awareness. You built discipline. When it was difficult, you faced discomfort. Instead of running from it, you protected your environment and you stayed patient when nothing seemed to change. This is how a strong mindset is built, not in a single moment, but in many small choices. And when those choices become your way of living, you no longer feel lost in your own mind. You become clear, you become focused, you become in control. And once you reach that point, life does not become easier, but you become stronger than anything that tries to break you.